Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and I'm bringing you a TV episode review. And the episode I'm reviewing today is Deep Trouble. Where do I begin with this episode? For starters, this thing has not aged well whatsoever. Some of the effects in this are pretty bad. Given, the budget from the 90s show wasn't all that spectacular, and they had to work with what they had to work with. But man, this episode is just a bunch of recycled and uninspired filmmaking ideas, and it's such a bummer that it came from the director of some of the iconic episodes like Werewolf of Fever Swamp and Welcome to Dead House. Same director made this. I think his name is William Fort. I think that's his name. But let's get into the episode plot and what that entails. So, first thing you need to know about Deep Trouble as an episode is that it's called Deep Trouble, and you would think it'd be about Deep Trouble, the book. But the plot in this episode is more on the lines of Deep Trouble 2, the book. Why they couldn't just name it Deep Trouble 2? Don't know. But, anywho, it takes place on this Caribbean island at this lab from the scientist by the name of Dr. Deep. And I think his niece and nephew have come to visit him. The niece is Sheena, and the nephew is Billy. And they're around their uncle's lab, and they notice that something seemed kind of off. He's doing a lot of experiments. He's very quiet with his research. There's this chemical called D13 that they're working on, as will come later to find out in this two-parter, that D13 has been used to experiment on humans. And what you'll see in like part 2, for example, are the humans that had D13 tested on them. And I'll tell you this right now, the sound effects in this episode are basically recycled from older episodes. Nothing original was made for this. They took the werewolf sounds from Werewolf Skin and Werewolf Fever Swamp and made the same sounds for the D13 creatures, which are sea-like creatures. Didn't really care for that. There is a cool pufferfish scene in the first part that's kind of scary, and it's like effects with the spikes shooting out. Really scary stuff. But anyway, Sheena and Billy are trying to figure out what's going on in this lab, and then it's revealed that their uncle's partner is this diabolical person trying to get his hands on the chemical to sell for a lot of money, and they strand him on this island. And when they get on this island, they see this giant lizard. And this lizard's all, it hasn't aged well. It's just a blown up effect of an animal that they try to make look giant. It's very reminiscent to Monster Blood, where they blew up the dog. It hasn't really aged well. So, for that aspect, it's very lackluster in the effects department. But the scenery, very, very well done. Like the island feel. Really feels like you're in the Caribbean, going from island to island. And then we get to the D13 creatures, which are revealed in part 2. That just gets to me. Like the makeup effects on the one guy that has like the octopus face, and one of them kind of looks like a crab. That's really eerie looking. But this one fish guy, you might recognize this fish. It was used, the same effect and same makeup was used in Shocker on Shock Street. I was like, wow, really? It just felt really lazy and uninspired. But basically, the story centered around, like I said, they find out that this chemical is being made at their uncle's lab. They find out that his assistant is evil. And throughout part 2, they're trying to escape the island from the creatures. They end up getting captured by the creatures. And then they tell them, no, you should worry about this guy. and they end up worrying about him, and they go back to the main island, find him, and then the end of the episode happens and leaves you there with the effects they decided to use. So, yeah. Nothing really much enriching about the plot. It's literally just you're on an island, they're trying to figure out how to get this chemical away from this one guy. They're trying to figure out how to save the people that have been affected, and basically the person who did all of this testing towards humans ends up getting the rightful punishment at the end. The maid lady was pretty creepy throughout this whole thing too. She had a really weird vibe. There were some redeeming moments, but for the most part, for this being the legitimate last episode of the entire series they ever did based on air date, this is such a disappointing way to end the original Goosebumps show. And I mean that from a good place. You know, I don't think necessarily there are bad episodes of Goosebumps like that bad, but I would put this one up there. If I had to say if some were bad, this would be bad. So this is going to get a very poor rating. I'm going to tell you that right now. So, yeah, let's get into the review. Now, dislikes off the bat. The effects are extremely uninspired, and they haven't aged well. The plot is there, but the plot doesn't really get you all that scared. I mean, the visual effects and the shock effects in part 2 are there. Like that scene in part 1 with the pufferfish. The visual horror is there to scare you, but the plot really serves no real function or any enriching part of the story unless you're looking at for a revenge ploy that goes on in this story. There's really no concrete message of what this is trying to convey. It's just there. It just exists. Like I said, the lizard scene and the sound effects were just so. I don't even know how to explain it without ripping into it too hard. But man, it just felt so recycled, and it's such a disappointing episode to end the original series on. But anywho, that, basically in a nutshell is what you're going to get from this episode. If you have never watched this episode, full warned, you're probably not going to like it. And if you do like it, you'll like it for probably the same reasons I think most people would like it. The scenery is there. It does have that atmosphere, but it's very minimal. It's very minimal. And you'll see what I mean in this two-parter. It kind of felt like it didn't need 2 parts. It could have probably been a 1-part story and been fine. It felt like it was drawn out. Took longer than needed to, really, to tell. Yeah, so this one's going to get a lot of points deducted. So off the bat, for those effects that haven't aged well, I deducted a full point. Really does not help this episode, based on the very minimal redeeming parts of the plot. The effects don't save it when it needs to all that much. So it's just... really hurts it in a lot of ways. So off the bat there, one full point off. I deducted another full point for the lack of meaning in this episode. Really, there's nothing to talk about. I had to rewatch this episode maybe twice to try to get what this episode's really about. And like I explained it earlier to you guys, that's basically what this is about. Very minimal. And it's supposed to be shock scare. It's supposed to be minimal to the extent where you're able to follow and take in the scenery and then get scared from the scenery. But the acting was abysmal. The kid who played Billy, he's not the best actor. Sheena, the actress who played Sheena, wasn't that bad. Dr. Deep was a pretty good actor. Even his assistant was a pretty good actor, but not much of a story to tell. So I deducted a full point off there. And then I deducted another full point off. Just for the unnecessary length to this episode. Very, very drawn out episode. Very long for no reason. But yeah. I deducted 3 points off. Now, redeeming factors to it are, like I said, the setting, the on-site filming was really cool. It did feel like the island. Some of the effects, like the pufferfish and the makeup effects, were good, but they have been used before. Sound effects, you're going to hear a lot of creepy music in this. You've heard it before in other episodes. And what really tanks this episode from, I'm assuming what other episodes I'm going to review on this channel would, why this is going to be so low compared to other ones, was just because of how drop the ball effect feeling it felt. They was like, okay, we're going to end it here and just do whatever. It felt like a whatever episode. It felt like they kind of, didn't put as much effort into this episode as they did in the past. Even on the ones that they completely butchered and the ones that you would think they didn't try as hard, you can definitely tell those episodes still had more effort than this one. So yeah, this one gets a 2 out of 5. It's below average. It's basically bad. It's basically a bad episode. And that's all I have to say about it. If you guys have seen this episode and you guys think I'm being too harsh on this, or maybe you guys agree, leave a comment in the comment section and let me know what you guys think about this episode. And until next time, see ya.